Hi, I'm Milena. Welcome back to my channel. It's a little bit late because I still have a bit of a cold. I had quite a significant flu, but I realized that I haven't done my January wrap-up yet, so I thought better late than never. I have a little pile of books here I want to chat to you about. I also have read a few books for a themed vlog, but I talk about those books quite extensively in that vlog, so I will mention them here at the end of this video. But if you want a more extensive review of those books, then I will leave that vlog in the description down below. Let's start with a book I don't really want to talk about anymore, but since I finished it in January, I still need to talk about The Professor by Charlotte Brontë. I do have a spoiler-free vlog and a live show, and there are free shizzles for that in the description down below. This was our last Brontë long book, and I had read it before, so I knew we wouldn't end the Brontë long on a bang, which was unfortunate. Surprisingly, I did enjoy this more than the first time I read it. So this is the book Charlotte Brontë wrote before she wrote Jane Eyre. It was only published after her death. This is about a man called William Grimsworth who tries to find his way in life. He starts out as a clerk for his brother, and later he goes to Brussels to work as a teacher, and he is an insufferable main character. He is very judgmental and unkind and just not a pleasant person to be around. His love interest is a character that I enjoyed, and I enjoyed how in interaction with her he had some sort of character development that I kind of missed out on the first time I read this. From a very low 2-star to a more generous 2-star this reread was for me. With certainty I can say I will never reread this again. This was it for me and The Professor by Charlotte Brontë. I think it makes sense because publishers at the time also refused this book because it's just not as good. If the themes of this book speak to you, then I would recommend Villette, which is Charlotte Bronté's last book and which is a book I enjoyed a whole lot more. A book that I am such a hard time with saying that I found it slightly disappointing, but that is The Years by Virginia Woolf, which is a book I've been wanting to read for a while, and I finally read it in January. It reminded me of The Waves, which was the book that Virginia Woolf wrote before this. It reminded me in a way that we have a big group of characters and that they are all connected somehow. Most of the characters in this book are connected through family. So we start out with family with our patriarch called the Colonel, all of his children and his dying wife. And we follow mainly his children, but also him throughout their life. And we follow, I think, their cousins as well, 2 of their cousins. There were parts of this book that I enjoyed, but I enjoyed them in a way that I enjoy a short story. The overall plot and arch of this book I didn't really have a connection to. I can't really tell you what the overall feeling of this book for me is about, because of course I enjoyed the writing, and within the writing there's always such a visual experience for me. So I have created a few images that I really enjoy and are very atmospheric. Just the characters in themselves. I know that it was not Virginia Woolf's priority, the characters themselves. I didn't feel anything for them. I had no connection. I didn't care what happened to them, and I generally didn't care what happened to this generation of a family, and therefore I gave this 3.5 stars. I wouldn't say I regret reading this because it's one of my goals to read all Virginia Woolf's works. So I'm glad I finally read it. I'm glad I can now move on to other works by Virginia Woolf. But if you are new to Virginia Woolf, or if you've just read 1 or 2 books, then this is not one I would recommend. I know that there are a lot of people who really do appreciate this book more than I do. Even though I didn't love it as much, I do think I will reread it, especially after reading Hermione Lee's biography of Virginia Woolf, because I think I may be able to understand this book better, even though it does have some problematic elements that are a little bit more prevalent than in her other works. I think I discussed that in a vlog as well. This is still within a realm of interest for me when it comes to Virginia Woolf's novels. Another classic I read was a collection of fictional letters. I don't want to call it a short story because I don't think it is a short story, but that is Lady Susan by Jane Austen. This story is based in 44 letters between Lady Susan and the people around her. Most noticeable is her daughter Frederica and her best friend Mrs. Johnson, with whom she has a lot of great gossip bits. And I remember watching the film Love and Friendship, and I really liked her interaction with the character that played Miss Johnson as well. Frederica, oh, the poor dear. Her mother tries to force a marriage upon her, that she thinks will benefit them all, but Frederica is not at all interested, and the man mostly is not interested in Frederica because all the men are interested in Lady Susan. Lady Susan is recently widowed and she is on the hunt for a new man, and she races through all the men, or that sounds not at all Regency, but she taps the waters with all the men to see who might be a worthy candidate and who will help her get as rich as possible. And one of her other tools is her daughter Frederica, which honestly I feel so sorry for her, but that's of course kind of the point of the book, that Lady Susan is this selfish fortune hunting woman, but she is hilarious. She is so witty and enjoyable to read about. Again, I think I liked her letters between her and Mrs. Johnson, her best friend, most because that's the only place where she is really honest. As to all the other people, she really has this mask on of the grieving widow. It really has that Regency setting comedy that I really enjoy often, and I really enjoy that Jane Austen wrote an unlikable female character as her main character, which I think I compared it earlier to Emma as well, but I feel like Lady Susan was an earlier version of Emma. Lady Susan is much older and I think I like her better than Emma. I think she's a more interesting character than Emma just because she is older and she has some experience, and even though she has that life experience, she still behaves like a bit of a teenager. This is really fun. I read it for the readathon, would recommend it to read it in a certain setting as well. I gave this one 4 stars. The last book I read for the readathon, it was Moominland in Midwinter by Tove Jansson. This was a gift from Petra, so thank you so much Petra for this wonderful book. I have now put all of the others on my wishlist as well because I adore these hardcovers. They are very, very pretty and they have really lovely end papers and illustrations as well. And I really like the Moomins, which I watched a documentary on Tove Jansson. I will leave it in the description down below. It's on YouTube, which gave me a really bigger view on the Moomins. So we follow a Moomin troll who you can see right here, and he lives in Moominland, which is all ice, winter, snow, and his whole family is in a winter sleep, but he wakes up and he cannot go back to sleep. So he makes a lot of friends who are not in a winter sleep and he really helps them. It is about trust and letting people in and helping people that you don't know and providing them with what they need, which I think is such a beautiful theme of kindness. This was something that I think has much more of a story beneath the surface. It's really about seeing the best in other creatures, even if they don't look like you, even if they live lives that don't look the way that your life looks, because Moomin Troll makes a lot of wonderful friends with creatures who look nothing like him. I am very curious to start reading some other Moominland books. I think I will read the rest of them in order because I think, is this number 6? I'm not sure. I think this is one of the later ones. I think the first one is about a comet, which sounds really fun, so I can't wait to start that one as well. In January I finished And the Mouth is Echoed by Khaled Hosseini, which was our Hobbitses book club read. I had an up and down kind of experience with this book. I started out not really feeling it, and then in the middle I was so impressed by the writing, and by the end I was kind of not feeling it again. We will still have the live show for this one. We had to cancel it because I had the flu, but we will do it Thursday. So I will link the live show down below, but I can tell you my thoughts really quick about this book as well. This book starts out in Afghanistan in the 1950s, and we follow a father who travels with his young daughter to Kabul, I think. They live in a village and they travel to the city. And then the brother really wants to join. The father very aggressively tells the boy to stay behind. But no, he wants to go along. He wants to protect his sister because he kind of feels like something is going on. Shit happens. And then all the other chapters are from perspectives of different characters who are somehow often very mildly interwoven with this core story. Once I was halfway through, I was still expecting the core story to play a bigger part in this book, but it kind of doesn't, which was disappointing to me, because even though I don't mind when a book deviates from the core story and we get some background on a side character, I usually kind of really enjoy that because I make those stories in my head. So when the author treats us to that, I usually really enjoy that, but I felt like I really missed the core story in this book, and it was definitely the intention of just getting to know a bigger field of players. That is, oh my gosh, did I just make a sports reference? probably wrongly, but never mind. Especially in the second half, I felt like we got a lot of perspectives of people that were a bit far-fetched. I feel like they were mentioned maybe somewhere in a novel, and then we got their whole lives and a lot of details about their lives as well, which I just could not get interested in, and I really wanted to be closer to the core of this story, which is really quite emotional. Just a beautiful story that raises beautiful questions of war and immigration and class, and I did really like that, but I felt that overall this book was a bit of a missed opportunity in really exploring those themes with character that a reader can easily connect to because they spend some time with them. At points in this book I really admired how the writing did those different chapters, but I think overall it did not completely work for me as a reader. We will talk about that more in the live show because I know that some of the other girls had different opinions about that. So I'm really curious to chat to them about this book. If you want to join our Hobbitses book club, you are very welcome. Every book club and read along I mentioned is in the description down below. And we have picked our next 4 reads, which I'm really excited for. Yeah, this was And the Mountains Echoed by Khaled Hosseini, which I will read oh, the other one that Lucy keeps saying I need to read. 1,000 Splendid Suns, I think. Which if I find it like secondhand, I will buy it. Like I said, I did film a themed vlog, so I will mention those books, and if you are curious to hear more thoughts on those books, you can go watch that vlog, which I had so much fun making. One of my favorite vlogs I've made, I think, on this channel. So it would mean a lot to me if you would watch it, which feels a weird thing to ask, but never mind. Okay, so I read Gallon by V.E. Schwab, which I was pleasantly surprised by. This is a YA fantasy about like alternate, not an alternate universe, but maybe a little bit. It's very gothic, very atmospheric, and I was pleasantly surprised by this one. One of my favorite books so far this year, which doesn't say much of course when we're in the middle of February, but I think it will end up on my favorite list, is Atlas of the Heart by Brené Brown, which I didn't want to love because I usually get very icky on self-help books, so I read this for the vlog and I expected to just find it very icky because I really dislike self-help books. It's just not my thing, but I didn't read this as self-help. I also don't think it really is. It's just a lot of information that I was able to connect with. And then I read Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel, which was a surprisingly enjoyable and well-written sci-fi, and surprisingly not because I don't think sci-fi is a good genre, but because I just usually don't enjoy this. Really enjoyed that. Another one I thought was good was Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, but I think everyone says it's good. If you want to know why I thought it was good, watch the vlog. And then I read Lessons in Chemistry, which is a book that I was slightly disappointed by, but also really enjoyed, which is a weird combination, but I think sometimes books are just a little bit overwritten when it comes to themes that I'm usually interested in, but because this is about a woman in the 60s who is a chemist, and clearly it's a lot about feminism because of course she is this intelligent, capable woman in a world where you're not really received well when you are. I just felt like that part of the book was a little bit overwritten and something that we have seen and done before. Lastly, a non-fiction. I need to read more non-fiction because I enjoy them so much. Is Bad Gays, and this is a non-fiction about a lot of bad gays in history from a queer perspective. So I really enjoyed this as well. So I read quite a lot in January. I'm happy I was able to talk to you about some of these that I hadn't really talked to you about. My February reading is going really slow because of course I've been sick, but I'll be back with a cozy reading vlog really soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in another video. Doei!